My name is Freya, and I wish I could tell you I was just unlucky, that I wandered too far and fell into something I didn't understand. But the truth feels worse. It feels like I was chosen. It started months ago. I was an ordinary girl, staying up too late with my laptop glowing in the dark, scrolling through forums most people would never admit existed. Curiosity was my curse. I loved mysteries, secrets, the hidden corners of the internet. The deeper I went, the stranger things became. Threads full of warnings, cryptic messages, rumors of a place people called the Red Room. Most dismissed it as an urban legend. Digital campfire stories told to scare hackers and lure thrill seekers into chasing shadows. Some swore it was real, swore they had seen things no human should ever see. I told myself I didn't believe either side, that I was too rational to fall for ghost stories, but the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The whispers got inside me like splinters. They burrowed deeper. Every night I sat there in the glow of the screen, too tired to think straight, but too wired to turn away. It didn't feel like I was searching anymore. It felt like something was drawing me closer, luring me into a place where I didn't belong, and then the messages began. At first, they were small, strange emails with no sender, no subject line, nothing in the body except a single word. Hello? I remember staring at it for minutes, wondering if it was spam, wondering if some bored troll had pulled my address from a list. I deleted it, but the next night another came. We see you. My skin prickled, though I tried to laugh it off. The internet was full of weirdos, but then came more, and the timing was what unnerved me most. They didn't arrive at random hours. They arrived when I was at my desk, when the light of my laptop was the only illumination in my room. One message said, "Nice shirt, Freya." Another, "You should sleep now." My blood ran cold when I realized I was wearing that exact shirt in that exact moment. The words weren't guesses. They were observations. They were watching me. I froze when one email arrived with an attachment. Against every instinct, I opened it. It was a photo of me, sitting at my desk, my face lit by the screen, my eyes wide with confusion. It had been taken through my own webcam. I tore a piece of tape and covered the camera immediately. My hands shook so badly, the tape crinkled and folded in the middle. I told myself it was fixed, that I had cut off their eyes, but the next night, another email came. This one saying, "We don't need the camera anymore." I felt sick. I tried everything. Reinstalling my system, running virus scans, even buying a brand new laptop, still sealed in plastic, still smelling of metal and factory air. But when I turned it on, within minutes an email appeared. "Nice upgrade, Freya." Whoever they were, they wanted me to know that no matter what I did, there was no hiding. They were already inside. The world outside my computer started to shift too. At night, when I looked out my window, I thought I saw shapes lingering in the street, silhouettes standing too still, a van parked longer than it should. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, that I was seeing shadows where there were none, but deep down I knew. I wasn't imagining it. I was being hunted. Then one night the final email came. Just 2 words. "You're chosen." And below them a single link. The letters seemed harmless, a short and almost ordinary string. I told myself not to click. I begged myself not to. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like my body was trying to restrain me, screaming at me not to move. But my hands betrayed me. My fingers trembled as they pressed the trackpad. The page opened to black. Then, after a long pause, red lights flickered on. The chat filled with greetings, lines of text streaming down so fast I couldn't even process them. Strangers welcomed me like I was expected, like they had been waiting for me all along. Then a camera feed came alive, and my breath caught in my throat. An empty chair sat under the glow of harsh red bulbs. Above it, carved into the wood, was my name. I don't know how long I sat there. Frozen in disbelief, my skin went cold, my vision tunneled. When I finally screamed and slammed the laptop shut, it didn't matter. The image was already burned into me. I couldn't unsee it. That night I lay in bed wide-eyed, unable to close my eyes, unable to move. Every sound outside my door felt like footsteps coming closer. Every creak in the walls felt like someone breathing in the dark. By dawn, my head ached from the strain of staying awake, but sleep never came. And the next evening, as if to confirm my worst fear, I heard it. Footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, stopping right outside. My heart seized, my lungs locked. I didn't dare breathe. Minutes stretched into hours until I finally collapsed into uneasy silence. But the following night, there was no pretending. A van pulled up outside. The sound of doors sliding open. I tried to run, but they were faster. The hallway filled with shadows. Hands grabbed me, rough and merciless. A bag was yanked over my head, the fabric suffocating, hot, smelling of oil and sweat. I kicked, I screamed, but the sound was swallowed. Rope cut into my wrists, my body lifted and dragged. Darkness swallowed me whole. When the bag finally came off, I was blinded by red. The room was exactly as I had seen it through the feed, down to the smallest detail, so precise it felt like I had stepped into a nightmare that had been rehearsed for me alone. The concrete walls rose high and unyielding, grey and damp, streaked with long black lines of moisture that looked like veins bulging beneath diseased skin. The air was cold, carrying the smell of mould and rust, mixed with something faintly metallic that made me think of blood, even before I dared let my eyes settle on the stains darkening the floor. Wires crawled across the walls and floor like living things, tangled and endless. Pulsing faintly with electricity, the insulation frayed in places so that faint sparks glimmered like tiny red insects scuttling through the shadows. They wound into holes I couldn't see the end of, stretching into the walls like veins feeding a monstrous heart. Cameras hung from the corners and the ceiling, heavy black lenses trained on me, their small lights glowing in rhythmic pulses as though they were alive, as though each was a single unblinking eye watching every move, every twitch, every breath I took. Their silence was louder than noise, their presence heavier than any hand. And in the center of it all, beneath the red light that poured down in an endless, suffocating glow, sat the chair. It was just as it had been on the screen, but seeing it here in the flesh was worse than any image. It was more than a chair. It was an altar, a throne built not for power but for suffering. Its wooden back was worn smooth, where countless heads must have thrashed, its seat stained with things I didn't want to name. Metal restraints protruded from its arms and legs, gleaming dully in the light, waiting like open jaws to snap shut. My stomach twisted when I saw it, but what made my blood turn to ice was the carving etched into the wood. My name. Deep, deliberate letters gouged into its surface, each one uneven but cruelly permanent, like wounds cut into flesh that would never heal. It wasn't fresh, it looked old, as though it had been waiting long before I arrived, as though someone had always known I would end up here. They shoved me into it with the efficiency of men who had done this countless times before. My body hit the seat with a thud, and before I could thrash or cry out, the restraints snapped shut. Cold iron bit into my wrists and ankles, tighter with every second, cutting into my skin until I could feel the sharp edge pressing against veins that screamed beneath the pressure. The sound of the locks echoed through the room, final and absolute, like the slamming of a coffin lid. I tried to twist, to pull, but the chains did not budge. The more I fought, the deeper they dug in, and the more helpless I felt. The masked figures moved around me like shadows, quick and silent, their steps almost soundless on the concrete floor. They were men, I thought, but there was no humanity left in them. Their faces were covered by smooth masks, pale and featureless, reflecting the red light in warped fragments. In those reflections, I saw pieces of myself, my eyes wide with terror, my mouth opening and closing like a drowning victim, but never whole, never fully real. Their clothes were dark, uniform, concealing every inch of skin so that nothing about them betrayed identity, not even gender. They could have been anyone, or no one at all. They didn't speak, didn't grunt, didn't even breathe loudly. They moved with the mechanical rhythm of people stripped of humanity, as though they were just extensions of the room itself, puppets of the unseen watchers beyond the walls. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry out for help, to demand answers, to beg for mercy, anything to shatter the silence pressing in on me. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came. My throat constricted as though invisible fingers had wrapped tight around it. The air sat heavy in my chest, and all I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heartbeat, slamming against my ribs, louder than the faint hum of the machine. The silence of the masked figures was terrifying, but the silence of my own voice was worse. Words formed in my mind, desperate and ragged, but they dissolved before they reached my lips. I was voiceless, powerless, already consumed. Then the screens before me lit up. One by one they flickered to life, their glow spilling across the concrete, illuminating the room in a sickly red haze. The chat roared alive instantly, lines of text pouring down in a storm, usernames and symbols blurring together, moving too fast to follow. Hundreds of them, maybe more, flooding the feed, their voices digital but no less monstrous. Commands, bids, numbers, money. It all scrolled endlessly, a tide of faceless cruelty. They were talking about me, deciding me, stripping me down into nothing more than an object, a spectacle. I was no longer a person. I was a prize. My blood froze, and the realization sank into me like knives pressing slowly, deliberately into flesh. It wasn't me who had found the Red Room. No, the Red Room had found me. Time dissolved into madness. Hours bled into days, or maybe weeks, I couldn't tell. The red light never turned off. It glared down with a constancy that broke my sense of time, erasing the difference between morning and night, between dream and waking. The chat never stopped either. They called me by name, reminding me I was theirs, reminding me that I had been chosen. Some ordered me to scream, some ordered me to beg. Others just watched silently, their money dripping into the system like drops of blood feeding a beast. I saw others too, other captives dragged through the halls, their eyes glassy, their voices gone, their souls already emptied out. Some never returned. I wondered if that would be my fate too. I stopped sleeping. I stopped hoping. My body shook constantly, trapped in a cycle of fear so deep I could no longer separate it from my own heartbeat, but somewhere inside me, a spark refused to die. I told myself if I gave up, I would vanish like the others, and no one would ever remember I had existed. So I watched. I studied everything. The guards weren't perfect. Even in their silence, they were human. They grew tired, careless. They left consoles unlocked for seconds at a time. They repeated codes without realizing I was listening. I memorized everything. Every flicker of the screens, every hum of the machines, every moment when the rhythm of their control faltered. It was my only weapon. My mind became sharper in desperation, clinging to patterns the way a drowning person clings to driftwood. One night, the lights flickered. Just a second, maybe less, but it was enough. I acted. My hand slipped from the restraints where I'd worked it loose millimeter by millimeter over days. The masked figure closest to me turned, but too late. I lunged, knocking the baton from his grip, and with a strength born from terror I never knew I had, I struck him. The others shouted. The chat exploded. The alarms wailed. My heart was thunder. I ran to the console, my fingers flying across the keys, typing the codes I had memorized. One feed went black. Another followed. It wasn't enough to save me, but it bought me seconds. Seconds were everything. I swiped the key card from the console, forced open a steel door, and plunged into the corridors. The hallways twisted like a labyrinth, each corner identical, each shadow a threat. Alarms shrieked. Footsteps thundered behind me, closer and closer. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I couldn't stop. I thought I was lost, doomed to wander forever in that maze of concrete and red light. But then, in the distance, a door burst open. Blinding white light flooded in, so bright it seared my eyes. Armed men stormed the compound, shouting commands, floodlights slicing through the dark, gunfire echoing like thunder. The walls shook. The red room crumbled around me. Hands grabbed me, but this time they weren't rough. They pulled me into the light, away from the chains, away from the chair. I collapsed into their arms, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. They told me later they had been tracking the red room for months, waiting for the right moment. By some cruel miracle I had lived long enough for them to find me. They called me lucky. They wrapped me in a blanket, gave me water, whispered that it was over. But it doesn't feel over, not even now. Not even as I sit in the quiet of my room, surrounded by safety I can't believe in, because the red room isn't just a place. It lingers like smoke, poisoning everything it touches. I feel it when I try to sleep and the dark feels too thick, too heavy. I feel it when I turn on my computer and the screen flickers a second too long before it wakes. Sometimes, when I stare into the black reflection, I see my face flicker back too slowly as if it belongs to someone else. Last night, another message arrived. The email was blank but for 3 words. No subject line, no sender, just, "You're still ours." And I know in my bones what I refused to believe before. You can run, you can scream, you can even survive, but you don't escape the red room. No one ever truly escapes, not even me.